Jennings, CEO of Mayo Roscommon Hospice, had declared as a Fine Gael candidate in the general election. From Garrymore in Mayo, she's comes from a strong farming background, now living in Hollymount with her husband Jarlath and her 2 grown children. Previously having worked in the private sector for the past 8 years, she has been CEO of Mayo Roscommon Hospice. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, Tommy. Thanks for having me on.
Just to clarify, you're on a leave of absence.
Yes, I am, yeah.
Right, so were you not to succeed, is it back to hospice?
It is indeed.
Okay.
It is indeed.
Why? Why run for Fine Gael? You come from a Fianna Fáil background. Yes,
but my family and Jarlath's family will be a Fianna Fáil background. I think it's a bigger question even than the party. Fine Gael approached me. I am the Taoiseach's choice for the Fine Gael ticket. I've watched what's gone on probably over the last 13 years now, since 2010, 2011, and when we were on our knees as a country, and we really were. And at that stage, it was the farming community that got us out of trouble. They, I don't even like calling them farmers, I call them food producers, they're entrepreneurs. They helped us out of that awful time. And then in the last 5 years, when we got everything thrown at us, from COVID to a war in Ukraine, I've watched how the government handled it, and I've experienced it through work and through the voluntary sector, that every time I went to the government, and to Simon Harris in particular, when we were building the cystic fibrosis clinic and the hospices, and there was an urgency on my part to get these over the line because the services were needed, he fulfilled his promise. It was done.
And when you say you watched the way the government handled the Ukrainian crisis in the context of thousands coming into this country, are you saying they handled it well?
I'm saying it was handled. I think nobody saw it coming. I don't think us as a people saw it coming. I think the Irish people, the Mayo people, welcomed Ukrainians in with their open arms, like we've always done, and we've looked at it compassionately. But also now, we have a Taoiseach who wants to put a firm and fair system in place, and I think that needs to happen now.
Has it not taken too long? I mean, even as we speak this morning, there are communities in Crossmolina, in Ballina, even in Ballinrobe. We understand overnight there was a situation developing there where some of the people living in the hotel there were asked to vacate the premises and then given vouchers for just another 7 days to find alternative accommodation. That doesn't sound like something that's been well handled.
No, I think one of the reasons I'm going for this, and one of the reasons I want to be a TD for Mayo, is we take too long to do everything. We put things, we put policies in place, we put investments in place, and then it takes up to 10 years to deliver something. Like Childcare was introduced as a 10-year plan. And it's an integrated health service plan, which I firmly believe in. Our health service should be an integrated plan. With the cystic fibrosis units and the hospices, we delivered an integrated health service in the space of a few years, and we did it under budget and we did it on time. And that's why we need people in government now that will place that urgency on our public sector to deliver things quicker and meet the needs of the people quicker, because it always comes back to what do we need? What can we do for children with special needs and disabilities? Why is it taking so long for them to be assessed? No child should be on a waiting list for 3 years.
But every politician in the country says that. I mean, with due respect, are you being naive in thinking that you can make that difference?
But I have made that difference. I absolutely have made it. When we built the cystic fibrosis unit, at that stage, we were bringing my brother into Mayo General Hospital, and an amazing staff down there and an amazing paediatric ward. But at one stage we went in and his IV was being changed in a broom cupboard. And we also had a situation for those patients where they were in hospital for 3 weeks at a time, away from their families. Siblings were suffering, marriages were suffering. Those families were in financial crisis. So I said, and my sister said, along with my family, we need to do better. We absolutely need to do better. And that service was at risk of being taken out of Mayo at that stage. And we simply went to the government and to the hospital and said, if you give us a site, we will give you a clinic. And that's exactly what we did. And what happened because of that was we then had clean air rooms. We had an integrated service with the paediatric ward. We had staff between both. It shortened the time where those patients were in hospital. So they went in the morning, they met their physiotherapist, their dietitian, their CF nurse, got everything they needed and went home again. And the difference that made for those families cannot be underestimated.
And that is a success story, and quite rightly you and your family can take credit for that. But you look at the wider picture, Martina. You know, we have trolleys on corridors. We have people waiting for years to get hip replacements and knee replacements. We have people who cannot get access to GPs, can't get dentists. The list just goes on and on. The listeners know all of this. I mean, you're not going to be able to solve every problem.
I won't change the world, but what I will bring to government is a voice that will not accept people on trolleys, that will not accept people on waiting lists. And also, like in Ballyhonus here, we have a primary care centre that's sitting out there with nothing being done on it. That's not okay for the people of Ballyhonus. They deserve the exact same services as the people in Claremorris are getting and the people in Ballinrobe are getting. It's not okay to accept that we have a building that we've put money into from taxpayers' money and it's closed. It should be opened, and we need people in government that will not accept and that's not afraid to challenge the system.
But that sounds like an indictment of the Mayo TDs who've been sitting in power or indeed on the opposition benches for the last 5 years, as if they haven't done their job.
But it's not done because the primary care centre is closed. It's not done. So this isn't a personal attack on anyone. This is a statement of fact. We can't accept that we put money into a building to provide a service for a town and it's not there.
Under the watch of Fine Gael.
Under the watch of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil and every other TD that's sitting in government watching over it.
So this is why people might find it hard to square the circle, that despite the fact that you're saying that so much has not been done, here you are running under a Fine Gael ticket.
Absolutely, because I believe we have a leader now that's looking forward to the next 5 years and looking forward to the next chapter, because we are now in a position where we have a country with money in it and where we can't look back over the last 5 years. We have to look forward now. And in 5 years' time, I want to be sitting here where we have made progress, where we're not sitting looking at policies. For example, the rail corridor. That policy's been written. That money has been promised. We still don't have it. It's still not in place. The SDZ zone in Knock Airport. Every policy has been written about that. Every single investment has been promised, but it's still not delivered. We need people in government that are not yes people, that are willing to stand up. And when I signed up to Fine Gael and when I gave Simon Harris the commitment to run forward on this ticket, he knew what he was getting. He knew he was not getting a yes woman, that I will not stand for us to make commitments and not deliver on them.
Where do you stand in relation to iPass centres? As I mentioned, I think there's 5 applications currently in place for centres. People in Crossmolina and Ballina, I mentioned, are very worried at the moment about what they're hearing about planning applications. Would you support an iPass centre in Ballina and in Crossmolina?
I'll only support a system that's fair and firm. That's all I will ever support. We can only take so many in and they have to be legally here. We are signed up to the European Agreement. We have an obligation to take people in that are in crisis, but they have to be here legally. And also now, they also have to contribute back to our society as well. And I'm a firm believer in, yes, bring people. These people are coming from traumatic circumstances. They're making traumatic journeys to get here. So we have an obligation to make our country safe for them and for our people. But also we now need a system in place where they are contributing back into our society and to our culture.
And do you think that system is about to be put in place? Because it hasn't been up to now.
I do. I do. And I will stand over that because we have to put it in place.
So what are you saying this morning to the people in Ballina and Crossmolina who are saying they are just not been communicated with by the department about what's happening?
Yeah, and I don't think that's fair. And communication is a huge issue. We need to be upfront and honest with people. Tell them what's happening. And then you can plan for it. But you have to be open and honest with people. We have to tell people the truth. We have to tell them, is it happening or is it not happening? Are these people legally entitled to be here? If they're not, are we deporting them back safely? And if they are here, are they going to contribute back into our system?
Okay, in relation to housing, what exactly do you know Martina, is Fine Gael's policy in relation to the numbers of houses being built or promised to be built over the next 5 years?
Well, in the manifesto, which will eventually, hopefully, transfer into the programme for government, it's 303,000 over the next 6 years. I do think that's achievable. I think if you look back on 2020, we were building 18,000 houses a year. That has now doubled to 36,000 a year, and it's reasonable to accept that that can double again. But it needs to happen quicker. It needs to happen so much quicker, and we need homes and affordable homes for our people. I think over the canvas over the last 4 weeks, however long I've been on the road canvassing, what has alarmed me really is the amount of empty properties we have in rural Ireland and in our towns. I think the changes to the Help to Buy scheme will help that now will be, if Fine Gael are back in government, be extended to second-hand homes. That needs to happen quickly. It can't be just words on a piece of paper. It has to happen really quickly.
The whole childcare sector are up in arms at the moment. I'll just read you one. This texter says, childcare is at the core front of this election, or should be. I have a childcare facility caring for over 100 children and 18 staff. If I could sell my business in the morning, I would, but I wouldn't be able to give it away at the moment. I have a waiting list of over 30 children. There are parents desperate for a place for their child. I've had to close a room as I have found it impossible to recruit staff. I agree with the funding of the parents to reduce the childcare costs, but for a facility stuck in a pay freeze since 2018, I don't know how much longer I'll remain in business. At 2018 fees, I can't afford to pay my staff the wages they deserve. The government have failed childcare providers. We've protested in Dublin on 3 occasions, but have not been listened to. I have been in business for 30 years, but don't know how longer I will last.
No, and it's not fair, because these people they're employing people, they're providing a service, and we need as a country to support them. And I am hearing it on the doors that we are not supporting these people. We're not supporting the parents, and we're not supporting the childcare providers. I do think the manifesto lays it out very clearly that there will be supports in place, but again, it needs to happen quickly. You know, there's a 100-day plan, but then there's also a 5-year plan. It needs to be implemented, Tommy. We need people in there that won't accept it, that we're sitting here in 5 years' time and we haven't helped these people.
But why have we not helped them?
I think we've been faced with a huge crisis over the last 10 years. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said before. There is no urgency. We have people in government for a long time. We now need we need stability, but we also need change of voice within government that has listened to the people and that has experience.
That's what Sinn Féin are saying, and all the opposition parties are saying.
But it's stability we need as well. What I'm saying to you, Tommy, is that we need people in government as TDs that have already delivered for the county, that has experience of listening to the needs of the people and putting solutions in place.
What about infrastructure? We know that there are some sections of roads in Mayo that are well and truly long overdue funding that has often been promised but never actually delivered.
Yeah, it's too slow. I think I mentioned it a few minutes ago that, yeah, the funding is in place, the policy has been written, the promise has been made, but where are the roads? Again, it's the urgency, and it's that kind of thing of pushing things down the line. I saw it with both, when we were building both hospices. They were promises made, and in particular, I think with the Roscommon Hospice is probably the best example, that it could have been put on a plan with the HSE estates and pushed down the line. If we weren't pushing it ourselves as a foundation and listening to the needs of the people in Roscommon, that would never have got over the line. We would still be looking at a situation where we had no hospice. We pushed it, and it can be done, and we've proven it can be done. And actually, that hospice started in 2020, just after COVID came in, when the whole country shut down. The concern at the time was that there would be no staff to open the hospice. It was built and opened within the 2 years, fully staffed.
Where do you see the areas where you could be most beneficial? I hate using the word one-trick pony, because you know your track record is predominantly in the healthcare area, but when it comes to other things like education and infrastructure, are you going to be a little bit at sea in all of those areas?
Absolutely not, because my experience comes from the private sector and the voluntary sector, and it's not just infrastructure. I haven't just built buildings. I've made sure the services are in place to open the buildings. So, one of my key priorities are our children with special needs and disabilities. We now have children that are waiting on a 3-year waiting list for assessment. When they get into school, they're getting services sporadically. So you have a child with special needs. We have a school in Mayo at the minute with 30 children with special needs that have got speech and language therapy over the last 2 years, 3 times. 3 times for those children. We now need long-term planners in place, that we have services in place from the minute the child goes to school right through their education and into adulthood, so they can contribute back into society just like the rest of us.
Lots of questions are coming in. 087 900 4141 is our number. Can you please ask Martina, how can people qualify for tax relief on rent? Paying €700 a month for my son in college, yet the landlord won't provide receipts as it's not on the system. So what are the government going to do in relation to this, saying that people will qualify for tax relief on rents when it is not possible?
Well, that's not okay, and I need to come back on the detail, because there's detail needed behind that, and I don't want to give wrong information. But if there's a tax relief system in place and somebody is paying rent, they're entitled to that tax relief. Okay,
one thing I wanted to clarify, I got an email from a listener in relation to a comment you made on the panel discussion on our lunchtime news the other day, where during the debate Martina claimed that Fine Gael have extended the Help to Buy scheme to now include second-hand homes. And the young couple in Mayo said, this came as a huge shock to myself and my husband, who are currently in the process of purchasing a second-hand home, and we're getting no support from the government to do so. We've spent the past few days seeking clarification on Martina's comments, and even Citizens Advice Bureau, also Revenue, have told us her comments were incorrect. They said, and they quote, the Help to Buy scheme only covers the purchase of new homes or self-builds. It does not include the purchase of a second-hand home. I'd appreciate if Martina could clarify her remarks.
Absolutely. The Help to Buy scheme does only include first-time homes now, but as part of our commitment to government, it will be extended to second-hand homes, and the grant will be increased by €10,000. So just to clarify, I meant if we're back in government, that is the commitment made.
Okay, so if Fine Gael back in government, of course, manifestos are fine in theory. It doesn't mean that everything that's in the manifesto gets to be implemented, does it?
No, but that's why we need people in there, that if we put something in a manifesto, it needs to transfer into the programme for government.
Okay, texts galore. Please mention this to Martina. We have Fine Gael in power for so long, and our country is deprived of services. Cost of living has gone out of control. Everything's gone south, and here we have a hopeful candidate spouting words, empty words, and that is all plain and simple. All these hopefuls will be as ineffective as what is currently sitting in the Dáil. Powerless. Anybody who would vote for these people again need their heads examined.
Well, can I just say, you wouldn't be voting for me again, you'll be voting for me for the first time, and anything I've ever said I would do, I have done and implemented, that has made a real difference to services in Mayo.
If there was one singular thing that you would like to really nail your colours to the mast on, if elected, what would it be for Mayo?
For Mayo, it will be that we ensure that we get the investment promised across infrastructure, healthcare and rural and farming. We are designated a region in decline. We live in one of the best counties in the country, and I'm biased. I commuted from Mayo to Dublin for 16 years for work. I absolutely love this county, but it really annoys me that we have investment promised and it hasn't been put back into the county. We should not be living in a region in decline. We should be bringing it forward. And I include in that the Cancer Care Centre in Galway. That has to be delivered in the next 5 years. There's no way around that. We cannot be living in a side of the country that does not get the same services for people diagnosed with cancer as everywhere else.
You know, there's such a thing called the party whip, where you have to fall into line whether you like it or not. Do you mind that?
I'll struggle with it. I will struggle with it. And I had to think long and hard about, what I was signing up to. But I believe in the leader we have now. I do believe we have a Taoiseach that wants a better country for all. I want a better county for all, for the people of Mayo.
Okay. Again, more of our calls coming. Just to clarify, you will go back to hospice if not successful. Elsewhere, loads of calls coming in about iPass centres, which we have dealt with. This texter says Martina has been very, very vocal and terrific at pointing out all the inadequacies of Fine Gael in government. That is something, as I say, I've said it already, and I don't want to revisit it. But it is something that people do find it hard to square, is that, you have been very critical of what the track record of the previous government is.
I think what I've made very clear is that Fine Gael in 2010 and 2011, when this country was on its knees, helped to bring it back into under the leadership of Enda Kenny. Since 2020, when we faced COVID and we faced a war in Ukraine, Fine Gael and the government did their very best, and I can say that from somebody that was, working in the private sector for that time, where they helped everybody through a really difficult period. So absolutely, am I not critical of Fine Gael? What I am saying is that our system as a whole is very slow to get things across the line, and we need people in government that are able to move things along a lot quicker and create urgency.
I don't know if struggle is within your vocabulary, but if you were elected as a TD, is there any area where you believe you would struggle?
It's an interesting question. I never see problems, or I never see issues as a problem. I always see them as an opportunity. I was always see to look outside the box and see, how can we get to where we need to get to? How can we deliver on what we said we've done? And the only way you will ever do that is with collaboration. We have some of the best people working in our health service, in our local authorities, and they're tied down by an admin system that can slow things down. But I've experienced in the last 8 years is that we can work around that and get things to move forward an awful lot quicker. But it does take thinking outside the box.
Finally, Martina, in 45 seconds or thereabouts, talk to the electorate. Why do you want their vote?
I am asking Mayo to do the right thing and vote number one for me, so that you will have a TD who knows how to deliver large-scale projects and services on time and within budget. And you now have the opportunity to elect a candidate to the All-Ireland who is not afraid to challenge the system and who has an unrivalled broad experience across the private, public and voluntary sector, and that knows how to listen and understand the issues and implement the solutions. By voting number one for Martina Jennings, you will have a TD that will ensure Mayo gets its fair share of investment across infrastructure, rural, farming and healthcare. And I will work hard with integrity, ensuring that commitments are delivered on for the people of Mayo.
Nobody, Martina, will dispute the wonderful work you've done as CEO of Mayo Roscommon Hospice. We do have a charity regulator in place. Yeah. Does it frustrate you when you hear people saying that CEOs and high-level executives in charities earn too much?
It doesn't frustrate me. I don't think about it too much, because I can honestly say over the last 8 years I have lived and breathed the job I've done. I've worked 7 days a week to make sure that we got the services across the line. And I think anyone that works in this sector is only doing it for the service we need to provide and sort the issues out that the people are going through.
You've got to put bread and butter on the table too, I guess.
Absolutely. Everybody has bills to pay. But look, if finance or financial was an incentive for me, I would have stayed working in corporate Ireland and would not have put my head above the water. I would have had a much more comfortable and easy life.
And do you believe that the salaries of all of the CEOs of all of the charities should be public?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, there we leave it. And thank you very much indeed for coming in.
You,
as always, to the listeners whose questions we didn't get to, we are passing on all of the questions to Martina and her team so that you can see the kind of questions and the queries and the concerns that you have raised. But that's Martina Jennings, Fine Gael, joining us in studio this morning. We're back in a moment.